stays focused north, and more than that, he stays connected to the community. I was just with him in California about a week ago in Altadena, and to see his real love and compassion and empathy. And I feel very blessed to be serving beside him in an institution that upon its founding didn't have him and I in mind when it came to who would serve in the Senate. So look, my staff wrote a lot of remarks for me, not as much as they wrote for the 24 hours. I want to just be real with everybody. I talked to some reporters today. It's nice to come off a high like that, but I reminded them of something. I reminded them about a woman named Tasha who worked in an IHOP in Newark, and she stood for double shifts, serving tables for minimum wage. She had 3 little boys, and when she could get her sister or family member to look after them, she would sometimes pick up a 3rd shift, 3 8-hour shifts. I want to tell you something about Alex, because as much as we love each other, we're competitive. The incredible union in America that represents farm workers challenged all 100 senators to just work one day, side by side, in the fields. Out of 100 senators, only 2 said yes. Alex Padilla.
Yeah.
And his bald brother that tries to keep up with him. I saw the videotape of his experience, and I said, okay, you went first. And I'm like, all right, I'm telling you right now, physically, it was the hardest work I've ever done. The heat was unbearable, and I felt faint as I worked that day, and I was sore for more than a week afterwards.
Exactly.
But what shook me to my core were the women I talked to.
Oh, that's right.
Who endured sexual harassment, who endured theft of wages, who endured insults, who were rendered invisible. And you realize you have a nation that depends upon a people for the very food they eat. During the pandemic, they're called essential workers, but yet we don't offer them the dignity and the security that comes with the legitimacy from the pieces of paper that are often held away from them. But yet we rely on them so much as a society for our economy. And to hear their stories laboring next to them had changed my life. I have to say, I'm so angry right now about how human beings who bring so much to our nation are being treated, and how this culture we're in right now is being whipped up into a frenzy of hate, suspicion, and cruelty. For we know whence we've come. During the Red Scare in this country, where demagogues rose during that period, there were, I call them Jewish Americans, but they were not documented immigrants. They were accused of being communists and deported from our country. We look at that as shameful, but yet we have a circumstance now where we have demagogic leaders who whip up fear and take people who have broken laws, the criminal accusations that are being made. That's not them. They bring value. They want to work. They are contributing. You take people in my state, dreamers, for example, that contribute hundreds of millions of dollars to New Jersey's economy, who are now terrified. You take people who have American children, an American spouse, who are afraid to walk those children to school. You have people here being disappeared, where even their lawyers don't know where they are. no due process, even though, as I said on the floor, even Anton Scalia has said that our Constitution 2 times doesn't refer to a citizen of the United States, it refers to people, to the humanity and dignity that everybody deserves. I read from the conservative Cato Institute, who said our immigration system is so broken and so backed up that getting that status legally is like winning the lottery at a time that our economy is desperate for the work, the grit, the dedication that immigrants are bringing to our country. I anguished that when I was back in Newark for a horrific shooting, police officer's funeral, that in this sad time, officers in my city wanted to come to me and tell me how bad it's gotten that when they're investigating crimes, the victims of the crimes are afraid to talk to them for fear of being deported.
That's right. That's right.
So they're having a hard time solving sexual assault, solving burglary, because we created such a climate of fear that they won't talk. The system we have right now is hurting American citizens. The system we have right now is hurting the American economy. The system we have right now is hurting American children. The system we have right now is hurting the moral core of our country. And so you have to forgive me. I don't have the same stamina as I did on the floor when this guy came and literally had my back. But I don't want to end on a high right now. I want to end on a hurt. And I know we're all here and we're bonded, but I want to take you to one of my lowest moments as an American. I ran for mayor and I lost my first time, and it was during this period between the loss and the win that I was just walking in my community, and gunshots rang out, and when I was visiting a friend, and I ran through some kids that were screaming and yelling, and it was chaos. A great Newark off-duty police officer was there too, thank God, and he ran. We got up the hill, and there was a teenager who was shot in the chest. And I have no medical training, and none whatsoever, and I tried to put my hand, I thought compression, I watched movies, but it was just awful, screaming the young man's name. By the time the paramedics got there and pushed me away, I knew he had died. And the police director, who was for the mayor who had defeated me, said that he saw me and he said, you looked like you were in a state of shock, you were shaking. And I still don't have a memory today of how I got back from that spot back to where I lived at that point in the top floor of some projects in Newark. Because the only next memory I have is trying to wash the blood of another boy off of my hands as I looked at myself in the mirror. And I'm telling you right now, that was a moment that I broke. All my hurt, all my anger, all my frustration. I loved this country, but I did not understand how we could tolerate such injustice within our midst. How can we go so comfortable with that which is wrong? So comfortable with that which is an insult to what we say we are. We swear an oath. We put our hand on our heart every day and we make this pledge of liberty and justice, not for some, but for all. And yet we seem, as I'm spiraling downward, we seem to just not care anymore. And with every one of our faiths talk about loving our neighbor, there's no exception after that. How can the quality of our love become so cheap that we don't care about the constant murder of children? How could the quality of our love become so cheap that there are workers right now who have been abused, who have been victimized, and yet there's no system for them to get justice? How can we have a system where somebody's only dream is economic opportunity and they're exploited so awfully? How can it be that someone who did nothing wrong just because of a tattoo of a hummingbird is sent to one of the most awful prisons on the planet? How can it be? I went to bed that night. I was done. I wanted to quit. I wanted to run. I wanted to give up. I poured so much of my heart into making a difference, and I felt like nothing was happening. Problems still seemed there. And I remember waking up that morning and getting into an elevator in the buildings and coming down, and as I walked through the lobby, I suddenly remembered that the great tent leader of our buildings, this elderly woman named Miss Virginia Jones, that her son was actually murdered in that lobby in the 1980s, well before I got there. But yet she never left the buildings. At the scene of the most horrific tragedy, she never left. And almost as God had planned it, I walked out into the courtyard between the two buildings early in the morning, and the only other person in the courtyard was her. With her back turned toward me, I stopped. As soon as I saw her, I just paused, and it was almost as if I was screaming under 100 feet of water inside my body, like she heard it. And this woman turns around and looks at me, and our eyes meet, and she did the only thing that I needed at that moment, the thing that this guy gives me a lot. She opened her arms for a hug. And I'm telling you, I'm 6'3", 200 and too much. And this is an elderly African-American woman, barely 5 foot-ish tall. But I ran across that courtyard like a little boy running into her arms. And she grabbed me, and she held me, and she squeezed me, and then it broke. It broke in a way that I know many of you sometimes break. Because, as I say all the time, if America hasn't broken your heart, you don't love her enough.
Yeah.
And I started crying, and she held me, and she said 2 words over and over again, and that's what I want to leave you with. The 2 words that seemed to rescue me on that day, the 2 words that I repeated when I would eventually become a mayor, and on my tough days I would say it to myself, the 2 words I still say to myself on the Senate floor when I'm banging my head against implacable walls of resistance. It's 2 words I said a couple nights ago when I wasn't sure how I was going to get from hour 20 to hour 21. It's 2 words that are everything about how we got here as a people. Every one of us here who come from immigrants, or slaves, or Native Americans, who've seen such horrors, such tragedies, but yet still somehow we're here. And that's the spirit we need right now. This is the spirit we need. We are on the right side of history. But for us to make history come true, I leave you with the 2 words that she said to me over and over again as she held me as I wept. She said, stay faithful. Stay